we'll get going. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope this is going to be a useful resource for you all as we deal with this rapidly changing situation even this afternoon, and we can offer you some advice and deal with your questions. I'll introduce myself. As I say, my name is David Hawkins. I specialise with international applications. It's great to have an expert panel here who can hopefully answer any questions that people might have. I'll ask them in turn to introduce themselves and go from there. In alphabetical order, if we don't mind. Alan, would you be willing to unmute yourself and say hello? Well, Alan, you're on mute right now, Alan, I'm afraid. Okay, well, whilst Alan sorts that out, Mel, would you mind saying hello?
Absolutely. So my name's Melanie Moorhouse. I'm the head of careers at St Clair's in Oxford. So we're an international IB school supporting applications around the globe, but a huge amount in the UK. And my background before that was A-level, sixth form college. So I have an understanding of both those kinds of applications. And I have spent much of the last week supporting the students who are feeling understandably very stressed and trying to pass on the information. So hopefully I can support you guys today.
Thank you very much. Alan, I see you're unmuted now.
Yep, how's that?
Yep, absolutely fine.
That's good. Yeah, so I'm an independent careers advisor, been in the business for 40 odd years, work in a whole variety of schools around the country, a little bit abroad as well, and with a lot of private clients. I think I'm going to learn more than what I'm going to give today, but and also I just think the landscape is changing so quickly. But I shall add in what I can today, so to the best of my ability.
Great, thank you. Mike, thank you for joining us. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Mike Nicholson, Director of Admissions at the University of Bath, and also an AQA trustee, and also apparently now UK spokesperson on admissions. So I think I'm here to represent the university perspective.
Great, thank you. And finally, Anne.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anne Richardson. I am the Director of University Advising at the American School in London. We are a high school, an American high school with an American curriculum, and we are an AP curriculum. And I'm also looking forward to learning a lot today from all of you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. The idea of the format, I've just shown the screen, is that we are recording the session. We currently have 203 attendees, but people weren't able to join it. So we've had the introductions. I'm going to ask the panelists to give one piece of advice in the current situation as to where they might guide students and to where they can go. And then I'm going to moderate some question and answers to take us up to sort of an hour's for questions that are submitted via the chat function. I should have just made the chat function live, so hopefully everyone can use that. If that's not possible, we will discover pretty quickly and I'll change the settings. But if we go around in the same order that we've just been through, starting with Mel, if we can start with Mel just giving your one piece of advice for students of the current situation. And for those of you who are typing, please do type your questions to the chat window. If I could ask that we don't have that function disrupted by people making comments that aren't necessarily going to be helpful at a particularly stressful time. So please, if you have a genuine question, please type that into the chat window, and in a few minutes' time, I will moderate that. So Mel, over to you for one piece of advice.
Okay, I might cheat and sneak in too.
Yep.
My biggest piece of advice to students and counsellors actually is, whilst it feels like everything is up in the air at the moment, you need to have faith and confidence that there is a whole army of people out there in governments, in universities, and in your schools, working on your behalf, advocating on your behalf, whose goal is to help this, to make sure that this is impacting you in the least possible way. And we all understand how stressful it is, and we don't necessarily have definitive answers yet, but it's there. What they need you to do is for them to be able to communicate with you. So whichever application systems you are in, if it's UCAS or it's universities elsewhere in the world, make sure they have your current email address, make sure that you are checking that email address, make sure you are checking on their websites for notifications, make sure you're on their social media channels so that when they have decisions and they have information or they need information from you, that you're getting that information from them.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Mel. Alan?
I think I'd say something quite simple, which is I think in a time when everything is changing, that it's not just about your qualifications, it's about you as a person, it's your attitude, it's your skills are going to matter. If you can show a little bit of resilience through this, that's going to go an enormous amount, a really long way. I think we are going to be perhaps moving into an era where the careers landscape is going to change a little bit, so expect some changes. But believe in yourself as you go through it, and believe in your attitude and your skills.
Great stuff. Thank you. Mike?
Just unmute there. I think the key thing to remember for everybody is it's in everybody's interests for this to all work. The students, the tutors, the universities, we all want students to have successful outcomes for 2020 entry. Obviously, we're working in a period where at this moment in time, there's an awful lot of information being thrown at us. I think it's really challenging at the moment for people not to react to anything that they hear, half whispers and whatever. We are fairly confident now, having talked to the IBO this morning, that next Friday when the IBO give out their information on what they're planning to do, it's going to be something that's going to be robust and it's going to work, and that will be able to kind of fairly assess students. We've had guidance today from England and Wales about what's going on, and again there does seem to be a genuine effort to try and ensure that there's going to be fairness and parity in the way that things are going to be done. And the universities and the exam boards are working with government to try and ensure that students and teachers get the most comprehensive advice they can, but it's going to take a little bit of time for everything to get set up. So we've got a little bit of opportunity here just to kind of take our breath. I think what I'd say to students, particularly those in the UCAS system who may be feeling they've got to jump and make decisions, they've got until the 31st of March for universities to get their offers out. They shouldn't be just jumping now because they're panicking about the fact that maybe they haven't heard from universities. We're still working to the same timetables with UCAS, and universities, I think, are trying to get messages of reassurance out to students who are still who are waiting offers. And then the students have got time, under the UCAS system at least, to then reflect on the options that they've been given. It's been harder because some universities may not have had the chance to complete their applicant visit day proposals, but there's an awful lot of information that students already have access to. A lot of universities are putting a lot more information online, doing webinars, trying to give students the opportunity to ask questions. So I would just kind of, I know it's really hard in a time when people are feeling a lot of uncertainty. We need to try and use the tools we've got to take the information.
Sorry guys, can I just ask this, and I said this at the start, please can you keep your microphones muted? It's obviously going to be very disruptive to the session if we can't hear the panelists. So I'm sure people are getting used to this technology, it's quite hard, but if you could keep yourself muted when you're not speaking as an attendee, that would be great. Sorry Mike, do you want to just finish off your point?
Thanks very much, David. All I was just saying was students have got a bit of time now, if they're working in the UCAS process, to make their decisions. They shouldn't feel they've got to panic and rush to a decision now. A number of universities seem to have changed decisions very rapidly in the last 24 hours, suddenly making people unconditional when they were conditional. I think that's been a bit of a kind of knee-jerk reaction to maybe some of the misinterpretation of what was being said yesterday. Students don't need to suddenly rush. They've got time to reflect and think.
And finally on to you, I'll just put the slide that you asked me to put up there, Anne, so people can see that as well.
Great, thank you. My piece of advice is for counselors and advisors who have students who are applying to the United States. NACAC, with the National Association for College Admissions Counseling in the United States, have put up a website, and you can see the link there below. And many colleges in the United States have updated what they are doing in light of all of this turmoil on that link. And so if you are looking for information about specific colleges and universities, I would absolutely go to that link. You also will find contact information there if you have questions. So that's my piece of advice. I would echo what everybody has said in terms of breathing deeply and not rushing to make decisions. We do have time, and things are unfolding so rapidly in the last week that it's going to be important just to take a deep breath and really think about what is going on in terms of all the information that is rolling out.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So again, if we can just keep the courtesy of keeping each other muted, that's great. I've had a lot of questions come in that sort of 10 minutes, so thank you everyone who has submitted a question. I've closed off the chat function now because we've got more than enough to deal with. So we will try over the next 45 minutes to get through as many of those as we possibly can. First key thing that I will do is that some people from the questions have not seen some of the communications that's come out just in the last couple of hours. So if I don't mind, and maybe Mike, if I could come to you, because you've been asked this a lot recently, the guidance that you referred to that's come out for A-levels within the last 2 hours, would you mind just giving a brief summary of that? And then possibly then Mel, if we can go on to you to talk about IB.
So the Department for Education have put up a press release. It's on their website, so it's dfe.gov in the UK. And they have basically said that in England, most of the assessment this year will be done by teacher moderated activity, including things like internal assessments that schools might have run, pieces of coursework that students might have already submitted, and then it will be moderated by the exam boards. So there'll be a kind of quality control check from the exams authorities, and they are aiming to get the results out, interestingly, this year by late July, which obviously brings forward the possible timescales for the A-level results being in the hands of universities. It's only just been announced, so obviously no university yet has figured out how they're going to react to that and scale up for that. There is also going to be an opportunity apparently for students to do a resit opportunity or an exam opportunity in September when the schools open. Again, no real clarity over whether students who maybe don't get the result that they were hoping for will be able to do the September resit and then progress to university in the 2020 intake, or whether it's to allow those students to kind of get the exam done and then do something for the rest of the year before they start in 2021. But I think under the current timescales that we tend to operate in, the idea that we can suddenly find a flurry of students coming in 2020 based on those September exams, that's going to be quite challenging for a lot of universities. So I think we get how to settle on that. The Welsh announcement, which has only just come out as well from Qualifications Wales, the Welsh system is slightly more through because they've still retained AS levels, so 50% of the students' mark is already kind of in the system, plus some coursework assessments. So they will be basing, I think, their grading on the information they've already got on students, but it's more comprehensive maybe than we've got in England, at least from an external assessment point of view.
Thank you, Mike. And Mel, from what we know of the IB as an advisor in IB school, what can we add?
So we don't know as much as we do for A-level and GCSE or even international A-level from Pearson. The statements coming out from the IB are still very much referring to if the exams are closed. So I think there's a question given that Pearson, for their international qualifications, have said today that if centres can open, that they will sit them, that we might be seeing a position where the IB is going down it on a country route, but obviously we're expecting an announcement on Friday. The kind of statements that they have made so far have all included references into kind of ways that students might be able to be awarded grades. So I don't think we're looking at a situation if they just cancel it and no one gets a diploma, but I don't think we have an answer yet. I'm guessing from Mike's comment at the beginning that he has more up-to-date information from me, and that hopefully when we do get the information out on Friday, that it is going to be robust and it is going to reassure students more fully. But I think the reason we don't have it yet is that they're wanting to make sure that what they're coming up with works globally and doesn't just work inside the UK for UK students with IB, but works whichever countries they're applying to. So I know for IB students it is incredibly stressful, but at the moment you do just need to. I would echo what Mike and Anna said. You don't have to put those university decisions in yet. None of you will be at your UCAS deadlines yet. Certainly what we're saying to our students is you probably are better off waiting to see what the actual decision is on Friday to inform what your choices you're putting in if you already think you're ready, and wait to see what happens. So we don't have as much information, but they are clearly trying to think this through and do it in a really robust way.
Thank you, Mel. And I just repeat for those who would maybe join the call, if you could keep your microphones off, that would ease the conversation. So thank you. And if we can come to you then, clearly at the American School of London, you have students not only heading to the US, but also going to other destinations around the world. If you don't mind, for any people, advisors on the call who have offers or waiting to hear on offers, if you don't mind just giving a brief summary of what kind of the sort of situations, I guess particularly people on the
I'm sorry, David, there's a lot of feedback back. Question again?
Thank you. Sorry, if I could ask you, people on the call whose microphones are not muted, please could you make sure they are muted? It does unfortunately make it very hard to have these kind of conversations. Thank you. Anne, sorry, just...
David, sorry, this is Dilip. Can I make a suggestion? If you are a moderator of this particular call, you might be able to mute everyone by default.
Thank you very much for that. I can fortunately mute everybody, but if I mute everybody, we won't be able to have the panelists, I'm afraid. So it does. I have to rely on the goodwill of other people on the call. But thank you for that suggestion. Otherwise it's just me speaking, which is not going to be the most useful thing. So please, people, do have some courtesy yourself. I'm sure it's done accidentally. And sorry, the question was to you. For students in the UK who may be holding offers from other countries, particularly the US, are there any key points that people should be aware of at this stage?
So again, what's been happening in the United States is that there has been a lot of discussion about moving the May 1st reply date to June 1st. And there are a number of institutions that have decided to move that date to June 1st, but there are also a number of institutions that have decided to keep the May 1st date. The link that that David put up on the screen earlier has that information as to whom is using June 1st and who is using 1st. Unfortunate any uniformity in the United States, and so it's going to depend on a case-by-case basis. The other thing that I would add is that in the United States there is definitely a tradition of visiting colleges and universities during the Easter holidays to go to admitted student days and things like that. All of those have been cancelled in person. However, US colleges and universities are doing a lot of admitted student events online. So again, check the admitted student, check the websites, have your students check their portals, and they will be able to participate virtually in many student events for the institutions where they are holding offers of admission. And then finally, I would say is this week and next week, that will be the final release dates for admissions offers, and all of those will be concluded by the end of March.
Right, thank you, Anne. Alan Bullock, I'm hoping you're still around if you've come off the web camera. If you are, maybe you can come on, because we've had a couple of questions about student finance. Hi, Alan, there you are. Some questions about how some of this may all affect student finance within the UK. I know that's an area that you have a little bit of expertise in. I just wonder whether you can maybe give a little bit of reassurance about that side of things.
To be honest, I'm not an expert in it. I don't really know anything more than anybody else. And I've not updated myself on this. So I think I'm going to have to pass on that at the moment, David.
Okay.
Do you want me to say something, David?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on, Mike, you go, because you'll know more than me.
All I'm saying is we are assuming that everything will still run as per. So the opening of Student Finance England and all the various other devolved nations should just be happening as usual. The challenge again is going to be if things get punted back a bit because of these September exams and there's a second intake at that point in time, or that effectively becomes a clearing default position, then there may be some people who are suddenly moving universities quite late on for Student Finance England. But actually, if things have results are out in England in July, then actually that might move things forward a bit, because students might know at an slightly earlier stage which universities they've had their confirmation for. So I think again for students in the UK, they should just follow the guidance that they've already got. There's no reason to suppose that there'd be any change to the situation that they find themselves in, except for parental circumstance. Because obviously the year that that is taken into account when your household income is calculated is the 2019-20 tax year. Now, you know, given everything that's going on, there's a lot more financial insecurity, particularly I suspect for parents who are self-employed. So people may need to be asking for a reassessment based on projected earnings as opposed to what's been earned in the tax year that's just about to end.
Okay.
Can I add to that, that obviously the students often get hung up on this. When you apply for your student loan in Student Finance England, you put down the university you think you are most likely to go to. Once you then have your online account, it's very easy to go in and update it. We have that system because of our confirmation and clearing process every year. And you can apply even before you put firm insurance choices in if you want to. You put the one you think is your most likely, you can go in and change it. And to echo what Mike said, there is a process for if family income significantly changes to put it in for reassessment. So I think the thing is not to leave it too late, give them the time to get through all the applications.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Another question came in. We've heard obviously a lot about A levels and IB. However, there are students who are doing many other qualifications which give them access to higher education. BTECs, access to HE diploma, people doing arts foundations and all those kind of things. I wonder with what one of the panel might feel comfortable in just speaking about how those things may be impacted based on what we know thus far.
I'll kick off. BTEC students are probably quite a long way through the course, and there's a reasonable amount of coursework assessed content. So if the general rule of thumb that's emerging is some form of assessment based on work that students have done already, BTEC students are actually in quite a strong position to have the majority of their course probably accounted for. And again, there'll be the usual moderation by the exam boards. The access to HE courses is a really interesting question. We were having a discussion today at Bath about how we deal with some students who are awaiting offer and who we were due to interview, and now the assessment we're going to be using isn't probably going to work for us.
What a waste of time. Let's go watch the news.
So on that basis, I think what we've probably got to do is wait for a bit more guidance on what the access to HE providers are going to be doing, because again, we're trying to compress in a year what many students are doing over 2 years. So if teaching in colleges is stopping now, which seems to be the case in many cases, students are that much further. The percentage of the course that they've done overall means that they may still be missing some quite key fundamental elements. So if you take students, for instance, who are doing access to science courses, they may not have done enough organic chemistry yet to really have any knowledge or confidence from an admissions point of view about how much they know about that core topic if they're going into a medically related course or a chemistry related course.
Shall I add into that one? So my college actually we teach a university foundation, which has a lot of similarities with access to HE, and I was involved in some of the conversations about what we might do with it. We've covered most of the syllabus, and we're into kind of revision and assessment phase. But what we are looking at is how we continue virtually teaching it, and then how we adapt the assessment processes. So they've done about 60% of their coursework, 40% would have been exams. So we're looking at how we can create those assessments and create that evidence in different ways using virtual platforms. So I think that might be one route that people are looking at. And again, if we're looking at the basing on what you've done so far, it might be a much to do with how far through your course you are.
And I think, thank you. I think I'll add to that the sort of model that A levels are going to go down, I think, will probably be a model that other exam systems will follow. For students on the call, a lot of these qualifications are all run by the same exam board, so they'll be putting the similar processes in place. So thank you to the panel for that. We had some questions from people on the call who are international students who are potentially holding offers within the UK. Students who are doing EU qualifications, students who may be doing US qualifications. If I could come to you first, Anne, on the situation maybe for students who are doing APs and things in the US, and to sort of that situation, and then maybe Mike, if you could talk about some more widely international qualifications and how that might work.
So the College Board announced literally about an hour and a half ago that APs will not be administered this year as they normally are. APs are going to be administered in a 45-minute test that students will be able to take at home, and that will be proctored in some way. There are going to be 2 test date opportunities, and there is going to be a cutoff in terms of how much of the AP syllabus they are expected to know, and that cutoff is going to be end of March, early April. So this is a major change for the APs. There will be more information coming out on April 3rd as to how this will work. I think that it is going to be a very interesting and somewhat innovative, and really I think will kind of change the face of the way testing is going to be done in the US moving forward. So I'm sure that those of you who are taking APs will be getting more information from your teachers as we move forward, and again, it will be updated on April 3rd. As far as subject tests are concerned, MIT has just announced. MIT was the last university in the United States to require subject tests, and they have just announced again this week that they will no longer require subject tests for entrance to MIT, and in fact, students even if students submit subject tests, they will not be used as part of the admissions process. The ACT and the SAT have been canceled at the moment, in the ACT in April and the SAT in May. Stay tuned as to whether the College Board will open the SAT on the June testing date, as well as the SAT subject tests, and then ACT will be administered in July. And again, I would remind everybody that the SAT will be administered internationally this year in August.
Thank you, Anne.
I think that's about it.
Great. Mike, and more widely on international qualifications, which are themselves also being disrupted in the same way as British ones are. Just a little overview on that, if you might.
So we know that the Indian exam series is now being cancelled, or that's the information we've had. So again, we'll be waiting to see with interest how they are moderated this year, because again, I assume every national exam system will be wanting to try and ensure that their students have a means to progress on. Particularly, we are at BAF paying great interest in what's going on in France. We have a lot of students doing the French bac, and we know, of course, the French universities generally need the results at an earlier point in time than we do. So we are assuming the French government will move to provide some moderation there. it may be easier in many other education systems to come up with some results on the basis that there is ongoing assessment as opposed to large amounts of terminal assessment. And I certainly think in education systems where students have been building up performance over a number of years, that will be much, much more straightforward to come to a satisfactory way of supporting a robust evaluation. I think that the challenge that we've had actually interestingly in England this year, and it's because it's a newish system, we haven't yet had an awful lot of experience of the new A-levels introduced following Michael Gove's reforms, and of course that means that we've got less evidence based on the new specifications to utilise as a benchmark. So that's really where the challenge is coming at the moment in England. But I think for many other international education systems, we've got a lot of history tradition that we can call upon, and also we've got a fairly clear sense that it's in the interests of the governments concerned to come to a conclusion fairly rapidly.
Great, thank you. We had questions to do with sort of people on different timelines. So people who might have intended to do their A-levels this summer and then have a gap year, you know, whether they have deferred entry already, offers through UCAS for deferred entry, or we're going to apply from their gap year. But equally students who maybe took A-levels last year and we're going to retake those A-levels this year. I wonder whether any of the panelists would feel comfortable in dealing with either one of those two issues.
I'll have a shot at that one as well. The students who are looking to maybe defer till 2021, it may be that this September series of qualifications of A-levels that's being proposed might be the route for those students, particularly if they don't feel that the assessment that they get through their school and moderated by the exam boards is going to get them to a point that they need to make a competitive application for 2021, or they've missed the requirements for 2021. So that means at least those students would be able to do something in September and then, you know, wait obviously for the results to come out, but it means that their life isn't on hold until the following June, July set of exams, for instance. I think for students who are effectively waiting to resit this year because of last year's results, those students effectively are going to have to rely on the moderation that's coming through. Although I would suspect that universities who've got students in that situation over the next couple of weeks and months will be looking at how narrowly those students have missed, and, you know, maybe taking an assumption that, you know, if somebody slipped a grade, are they going to necessarily wait for the resit, or even if in fact they do wait, sorry, for the assessment, they may be prepared to kind of wave students through. It'll be very much done on a case-by-case basis. It'll depend on how competitive the course is, but at least those students already have some qualifications, again, in the bag, and that might be the basis for the university to make a more robust assessment.
Great, thank you, Mike. I think I'd just like to add something on that when we get into these individual scenarios, and if you are, you know, students on the call who are dealing with these, you know, situations which won't be the common pathway for people, please do speak to your higher education advisors, your heads of sixth form, your careers advisors in schools or colleges. Reach out to universities who will be navigating these things as well. As was said in the introductions about pieces of advice, everyone is dealing with this challenging situation in their own ways and is going to try to do their best to help. So if you have particular questions that we're not able to answer, those answers will become apparent. And as hopefully Mike is evidence of, university admissions teams, recruitment teams are genuinely nice people who are trying to do their best to help. So please do contact them. There's a couple more questions I want to get to. I want to give Alan a kind of warning just to think through an answer before we get on to another question in a second. So Alan, we had a question about people who are using A-levels to apply for degree apprenticeships and school leaving programs and things. I'm going to ask another question first, just to give you a couple of minutes to kind of think through a response to that. But you know, the question that's going to be the filler into the time is, obviously the information that is going to be given to exam boards is going to come from teachers, and predicted grades will form an element of that. Everyone in the higher education space knows that predicted grades are a complicated thing, and different schools have different policies. A lot of the questions that students asked in the chat when I had it opened were to do with, well, my school has a generous policy, my school has a tough policy, how will this work? I wonder again, and I think, Mike, this is again probably going to come to you. We're obviously all a little bit in the dark on this, but if you have a situation with something to do with your predicted grades, whether you feel they were too high, you've done better since, they were too low, you've done better since they were too high, and you don't think you're going to meet them, or anything to do with that whole element of predicted grades, what advice could we pass on to students?
I think we're expecting schools, to play fair on this. It's in everybody's interest for students to be placed in institutions where they are not going to struggle. And remember that we've got students who are, most of them will have done most of their coursework by now. There would have been a bit of kind of finessing over the next few weeks, but we've got to recognise that this is a generation of applicants where it hasn't been the usual pattern. It's also been a fairly distressing period. There's a lot going on to take on board, and students will be worried and concerned, obviously, for family members who may be in the kind of vulnerable categories. So there's a lot going on, and in any normal year we get situations where students have mitigating factors. I think pretty much everybody's got a mitigating factor, I think, this year. What I would say is that we are, I think, clear that the exam boards are not suddenly going to award everybody A stars. Again, reading the DFE statement this afternoon, the assumption is that the grade distribution will follow a pattern that's very historic. There has been, I think, a fairly clear sense that in the last couple of years things have toughened up a bit. So I don't think anybody can expect that schools are suddenly going to start awarding a load of A stars. The exam boards will have a pretty good idea based on school cohorts and the kind of demographics, what a typical pattern from that school would look like. And if suddenly all of the teacher moderated stuff seems to suggest that everybody's kind of suddenly stepped up 3 or 4 grades, there's going to be some tough questions asked. So I think we can assume that there'll be quite a lot of use of contextual information that the exam boards will have that will help them kind of come to a conclusion on what's a fair distribution of grade.
Okay, thank you, Mel. You want to just come in on that as well?
Yeah, I was going to add. So I've actually had students already who've had contact from universities that they're firm offer holders for, specifically asking them to kind of be logging or be communicating to them exactly what the situation for them has been, at what point did teaching stop or go virtual, which things have been disrupted. So I know there is a sense, and I've got students panic about, will they only look at my predicted grades, will they only look at my mock grades? I don't think any university is going to take one piece of evidence in this picture. I think most of them are working very hard to try and see a whole picture. I think the exam boards will probably want to see a whole picture. And certainly in the statement that came out from Ofqual, there was very definitely a sense that they were going to be asking teachers for updated information. So if you are the kind of student who has turned the light bulb on between when you were given your predicted grades and now, your teachers will have that chance to demonstrate that for you. And I would be surprised if that's not done for other education qualifications around the world where they're planning on awarding grades. They're going to look at a whole range of it, and they're going to try and make it as fair as possible. And I'd echo what Mike said. I think most schools historically know where their predicted grades sit, and I'm quite sure universities track how accurate schools' predicted grades are, and exam boards have that data, and I'm sure that will be used in the kind of calculations of how they put it together.
Great, thank you, Mel. And I would say for any HE advisors, people on the call, maybe if you haven't got that data, that might be something that actually, if you have the time in the next week or so to start to maybe look at that data as well, as to the accuracy of your predictions, just that, so you've got maybe a sense of how things are going. I've seen Alan frantically maybe taking some notes and things, so hopefully having teed you up, Alan, you might have some sort of guidance on this extraordinarily complicated situation where students might be using their A-levels to apply into a multitude of different school leaver, degree apprenticeship type programs with all sorts of different things. Any particular guidance you might be able to give to students in that situation?
I think this is an area I kind of hoped might come up. What I've been noticing clearly, as I'm sure lots of other people have over the last 2 or 3 years, is a growth in the number of students kind of across the board becoming interested in apprenticeships at 18. either instead of or quite often as well as applying for university as well. I'm certainly seeing a growth across a wider range of schools. In fact, there isn't a single school I work in now where there isn't an interest. I've been actually, sad person that I am, I actually keep quite a lot of detailed information on this. I've been tracking all the degree and higher apprenticeships that have actually been advertised in England in about the last 18 months, and keeping fairly copious statistics on these, particularly kind of the occupational areas that they're in, the salaries that they offer at the start, and also the grades that they need. So I think it's quite interesting to see what those kind of the patterns are. I would say probably, I mean, my guess is that probably for every 10 students that go to uni, maybe one will get a degree or a higher apprenticeship. So it's, you know, they're a minority of students. And I suppose it'll sound negative, but I think changes now in national and global economy isn't going to help matters. And I think it's going to create a landscape that is going to be kind of hard to keep pinned down. I don't know if I can say anything. I think what I would say is if anybody wants to sort of share some of this information I've got, you know, I'm very open to sharing it with people, and certainly having conversations about what this pattern is looking like, and maybe having conversations about how it might change, because it's not going to stay the same. I think. I mean, if we're looking at sort of redundancies in companies across the board, and this landscape is going to change a lot. But I would certainly be happy to share information with people and try and keep a track of this, and give us sort of enable us to give us the best possible advice to students. We're living in changing times anyway, and I think those changing times are going to accelerate now.
Great, thank you, Alan. And I guess the same advice as we said before. If you are an advisor, you have students, potentially going through selection procedures or have already got places for higher or degree apprenticeships, then to obviously let the dust settle a little bit and then have those conversations about what are the situations going to be there. That leads on to a question which I want to go on, Alan.
I've just been watching what's been happening this week. I kind of sensed there was a slowdown, and maybe, and I'm not sure, whether they're starting to slow down already, or whether things will carry on sort of roughly at the same pace for the time being. But I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Great, thank you. So, and the question to come to you, and this is more kind of in the sort of pastoral advising sense. People's lives have changed. People's situations have radically transformed since they made the decisions about where to apply to. And you, particularly at the American School in London, have a very globally mobile student population. If students are sitting here now saying, look, those 5 choices, or indeed more choices for other countries that I made back in October, November, December, that's no longer the situation I want to do. I don't want to go that far away from home. I want to stay in my own town, all those kind of things. From kind of a pastoral advising point of view that obviously links to these kind of choices, how might advisors think about guiding the students in those kind of things? And I guess if we can come to you Mel, as well, to think about the practicalities of that as well.
I think that with the economies doing what they're doing, and with the uncertainty about exams and diplomas and grades, that there will be a lot of second guessing as to what students might want to be doing in the next year or two. Certainly, what I would say to students is that it's okay to stand back, take a deep breath, and reconsider your choices, and think about taking a gap year and doing this again if that is what you want to do. I also think that universities across the world are going to be very understanding of students who, for whatever reasons, may not be able to start university in September. Certainly in the United States, there is a January intake, and there is always the possibility in the United States of deferring for a year and taking that gap year in order to sort out whatever is going on with your family, with your parents, and with your own mobility situation. I will say that one of the issues that the population that I'm working with is going to be dealing with is getting visas. I think it's going to be really important for students who need visas in order to go to university to really check what's happening in terms of the various consulates, embassies, and State Departments. I know that just a day ago, it was either yesterday or today, the US State Department has suspended all visa application services. And so it is going to, and we don't know when those are going to start up again. And so it is going to be complicated, more complicated than it already was, to get a visa to study in the United States. So my best advice at this point, and this is what I'm saying to my students, is that it's okay to defer for a year at your university, but it's also okay to sort of step back for a year and say, my life has changed, my parents' circumstances have changed, and maybe I need to redo this this whole process in a different lens.
Thanks, Anne and Mel.
Shall I jump in? So I would absolutely echo everything that Anna just said. The other conversation I've found myself having with students, particularly my ones who are still here, staying as boarders even though we're shut, is actually you need to acknowledge how you are feeling right now, and it is okay to be stressed and unfocused and confused, and you don't have to make a decision in the heat of the moment. So not all offers are in yet. The offers that are in, you don't have your deadlines yet, and actually I think any university who has got a current deadline, if you phone with a real emotional reason why you are not ready to make it yet, will absolutely listen to you and do what they can to support you. I'm particularly thinking of universities in the Netherlands at the moment. They would, you know, with quite short deadlines potentially. So I think it's important to recognise whether you are in the headspace to make a decision yet, and to allow yourself time to go, actually, I don't have enough information yet. I don't know what's happening with the qualifications. I don't know how much this is going to have hit my family. I don't have to have a yes now. And if you are the kind of person who needs to have a decision because you are that kind of person, think about maybe having a, okay, if A happens, I'm going to do this. If B happens, I'm going to do this. If C happens, I'm going to do this, to give yourself some structure. But be kind to yourselves. Allow yourself some breathing room. None of us have done this before. You are being required to develop resilience in the way that none of us have had to do before. It is okay to give yourself a break and go, actually, do you know what? I just can't think about this. I can't make a decision yet. I need to make sure I need to either have had more information, or I need to have more conversations, or I need to see how it's going to play out. That's perfectly okay too. Don't be hard on yourselves right now.
David, I would also add that I think that with all of this uncertainty, there's going to be a fair amount of movement in wait lists and clearing as well. So I think there's going to be some, there's going to be some time in the summer perhaps where students can also reconsider and make some different decisions.
Great, thank you. And you've read my mind. I've left obviously a big area to the end, and we've got just 10 minutes to do it. Lots and lots of questions, as you might imagine. And I wanted to get through the discussion because I thought we might address some of them on the way, about confirmation, about clearing, about adjustment, about near misses, all those kind of things. Mike will come to you first, and then we'll go round. I would say that obviously, clearly for the students and advisors, that's going to be a stressful situation, and people will think about that. I keep having to remind myself in this process, we're actually only in March still. That period of time is still away. And so there are some things that need to be taken into account now, but clearing, confirmation, adjustment, results days, near misses, all those kind of things, it's actually still quite a way away. Though for the students and advisors on the call who might be having some concerns or questions about that, what kind of things could we be saying to people right now? And if we start with you, Mike, and then we'll go around the panel.
Well, I think that probably the key thing to remind everybody is this is the year that we hit the demographic trough in the UK. So we have fewer 18-year-olds applying for entry to higher education in the UK than we have ever had for 20 years. So this is the year when it was always going to be good to be an applicant because the chance of getting an offer was always going to be greater because there was less competition. We've got a lot of uncertainty. It's already been mentioned that we've got no idea ultimately what the economic impact is going to be, but A lot of people may be a bit reluctant to come to university this year because of financial insecurities. So on that basis, I think you will find that this is the year when there'll be the greatest amount of flexibility shown by universities. We'll also, I think, be in a situation, particularly if the A-level results are out in July, that effectively gives us another 2 to 3 weeks on top of what we would normally have to work with students, consider near miss cases, think about how the process works. We may find that actually we almost revert back to the sort of thing that used to happen when I first started working in admissions, which was actually confirmation and clearing lasted for several weeks because people had the luxury of time to make decisions. And particularly because we've had a situation where things like applicant visit days may have been cancelled, there might be an opportunity to basically use that period in July when maybe the restrictions have been lifted a bit for people to come, have a look around universities before they have to commit to making a firm decision. So we may be able to restructure, given we've got a few months to kind of set it up, the timescales and the ways that the whole process could operate, because we're working in a very different period with a different kind of structure. So I think this is all very positive, to be honest. I think would have been almost more challenging for the sector would have been had everything been knocked back on the exams, so we had almost no time between the exam results coming out and when term would start. We've actually got quite a bit of time now to kind of use to make sure that students make the most informed and right choices for them.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Any other panelists feel they'd like to comment on what will happen with results, clearing, confirmation, anything like that? Please go ahead.
I'll step in. I think with off-quals announcement, particularly for A-level students, and for any other qualification that's already said you will get a grade, things will still happen. You will get places confirmed. I would echo the kind of conversations that we've had with universities all year, and actually the kind of offers we've seen come in all year. I think there will absolutely be more flexibility this year and much more ability to consider near misses. I think it's why it's really important to be in touch with your university and make sure they have the information for your mitigating circumstances, particularly if they're already asking for it. Making sure that your school is aware not only of obviously what they already know in terms of how your education has been disrupted, but if you are someone who then ends up caring for someone who is ill or worse, suffering a loss from this, universities will care. They will want to support you, and I think this year more than ever they will probably be looking for reasons to admit people, not reasons to say no to them. So I think I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, have faith and confidence in the fact there are admissions teams at universities who want to admit students and want to get students who want to be in their institutions.
Great. Anyone else?
And I'll pass over to Al.
Okay, well, I'll come in on that. My job has been to moderate, but I also advise students on these offers. I think, though everything is panicked and stressed at the moment and things are moving quickly, the issue of time is an important one. And I would echo that we don't have to rush into decisions, that people can assess the situation. I would also say, and hopefully for those who've stayed on the call for the whole time will understand that the panelists here today are extraordinarily experienced and have given some excellent advice. And it's not saying any disservice to these people, but I could have gone out to another four and another four and another four and probably reconvened this panel about 1,000 times over. And the students and advisors of the call would have had equally cogent and well thought out and very detailed advice given to them as well. So if you are an advisor in a school, in a college, in an international setting, I think, as in so many ways, though we are formally being told we have to be socially distant, through the means of technology we can be socially very connected. So please, advisors, do reach out to other advisors. If you Google any of us, I'm sure you can find our email addresses. But other people within your country, within your region, within your town, and students as well, you have within the universities or the school leaver programs or the apprenticeship programs, you will have people at the other ends of emails and webcams who can assist you. And indeed, at your schools and colleges, you will have higher education advisors, careers advisors, counsellors, call them what you may, who will be being plugged into this through all sorts of social media, who will be able to advise you as well. So please, please, please don't stress yourselves out on your own. we all have bigger things to worry about than university, unfortunately, at the moment, though it is obviously a stressful situation. And anything that us and the many hundreds, if not thousands, of advisors around the world can do to help, please do make use of us. Unless there's anyone from the panel who'd like to add another point now, I'll just look to see if anyone sort of raises a hand and wants to say anything.
I was going to say, can I add one other thing? Because I'm certainly seeing it from my students. It is very easy in the world of social media to find fake news, rumours, something somebody said, and kind of all talk to just each other in your community and end up panicking needlessly. So the piece of advice I'm giving all our students is absolutely keep updated, but go to reputable sources. Look for the updates from your universities, look from updates from organisations like UCAS or Ofqual, or your advisor in your school or other qualified independent advisors, and try not to panic yourself by reading things which are essentially rumours, conjecture, and not necessarily up there to help you.
I would add, I would echo everything that Mel said, and that I would also add, do not be sucked into the I heard kind of conversation. You have experts who really care about you. Please keep in, as we all sit in our homes, please keep in touch with the counselors and advisors and university advisors and university admissions people who really care about you. Don't listen to I heard, go to the experts.
The only thing I wanted to add is we're already preparing for the 2020 intake. We've recognised that with the disruption that's been happening, many students may have areas where they just need a bit of upskilling. There may be maths support needed. There may be academic skills areas that we can add to. So we're already at Bath certainly looking to enhance the existing already good support that we offered to students to make sure that when you arrive, the fact that you've had a disrupted year won't then stop you getting a good degree experience.
And Alan, anything you'd like to add?
Probably just never be afraid to ask for advice. There are no stupid questions ever, but I think now more than ever, there are no stupid questions. And if in doubt about anything, ask somebody. I think as an advisor, I've never ever valued my professional networks as much as I value them now. And I think just keeping in touch with each other and staying together and seeking advice is really important. Great,
brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully, over the course of an hour, we've provided some reassurance, some expert advice. As I said, this is going to be put out via YouTube shortly and shared for advisors and students to have a look at. I am extraordinarily grateful to the panelists who answered the back call via social media and came together very quickly at this difficult time to offer advice and share some really generous and heartfelt as well as expert advice. So thank you to Mel, to Anne, to Mike, and to Alan, and hopefully that's been a useful session for everybody there. I'm sure we can reconvene if need to in a couple of weeks or months to offer more advice. And probably now more than ever, everybody look after yourselves, look after each other, stay well, and please do reach out to any of us or indeed all the other people we mentioned if we can offer advice. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.